Good evening, Hall of Fame Dynasty members. It is I, your commissioner, or one of them at least, and we are here tonight to go over the 2019 Houston Astros, which are obviously managed by Kevin. He did a wonderful job last year. Obviously, he had some struggles, finished in 8th place last year. Officially, as we brought it down to 10 teams, it would have put him in 8th, I believe in 9th otherwise. But that being said, it's a brand new, fresh new year, and there's a lot of excitement. They made a lot of moves this offseason. They acquired a lot of good prospect talent. Whether that talent works out or not, we will find out in the future, but they have obviously made their moves to look towards the future and set up a possible dynasty. We all know that's what they want to do. That being said, they've got a lot of big names. They've got some really smaller names. We will dig into it here tonight as I hear you guys dinging my phone. And it clearly is working, so you tell me. But that being said, we've got a lot to look at today. I'm very excited about this team. This is probably one of my favorite write-ups so far just because of the different levels of talent that the Astros have, and they've been a very active team in the market in free agency, in trades, everywhere that they can possibly imagine at all levels. So let's get into it tonight and see what exactly we can talk about, Kevin, and see what the Houston Astros are thinking they can do this year. So obviously, we start with the Houston Astros. I absolutely love the logo. I love the color. The bright orange is always really, really nice for this team. And it's because I hadn't started yet, Chris. That's the reason that it was still showing black, is because I'll launch it and it'll say that it's there, but I haven't officially started the host yet. But anyways, back to the Houston Astros. Love this logo. Great jerseys. Can they fill the great jerseys with great talent? Let's break it down here in a minute. But first, we did do a small interview with Kevin, and he had this to say about his team. I asked him what exactly his goals were for 2019, especially after a disappointing season in 2018. I know he wants to improve, but what does he believe his team can do? He goes, obviously, the main goal in 2019 is to finish better than last season. So he has to finish better than 8th. Throughout this offseason, I believe we have improved tremendously and have balanced out everywhere needed. A lot of it their struggles came last year from the outfield and from the catcher position. Then again, catcher has been a black hole for pretty much everyone. If you don't have JT Realmuto or Yasmani Grandal, those are about the only two great catchers. And even Grandal, I wouldn't put it right up there in the same tier. It's JT Realmuto and everyone else. Obviously, Salvador Perez is gone for the season, which doesn't hurt the Astros, but hurts the entire catching landscape. But the Astros are looking to move ahead. They're putting 2018 on the back burner, not worrying about it anymore, and they're done with it. They're looking ahead to now and the future. They look to improve upon their 8th place finish. I wonder if the Astros can do that, and I have a lot of hope for this team for sure. Now, I also asked him who he expected to perform well this year. And he goes on to say, I expect our catchers to perform very well. This offseason, I acquired Wilson Ramos and Omar Narvaez along with Keibert Ruiz. This was the main position I lacked last year, and hopefully I have it figured out. Like I said, the catcher landscape was bad for everyone. I like the acquisition of Wilson Ramos in a competitive win-now team with the New York Mets. He's going to get a lot of play time. He'll be very active. Narvaez, I wonder if 2018 was really his biggest and best offensive year. A lot of the statistics don't lean in Narvaez's real in his direction. A lot of the sabermetric stats say he's going to regress offensively, and I worry about that. Keibert Ruiz obviously came from a deal with my Chicago White Sox. Great prospect talent, very young, on a good Dodgers team at some point. He's going to be in a good lineup. Whether he can take advantage of it or not, or how the Dodgers really handle his workload as he progresses along, has yet to be seen. It was hard for me to split with him, but Ruiz is a great talent. pretty good ceiling with him as well as a great floor. He doesn't strike out a ton, and I know that Kevin was excited to get him, especially at the young age that he is. A lot of people struggled at catcher, and I think that's something we'll all have to deal with once again this year because the catcher position just isn't the same. It's all about defense. Teams don't really care if they get offense from it. Look at Boston with Sandy Leon and the other catcher they had last year. They didn't really need it. Now, finally, I asked Kevin what the front office was excited for in 2019 with his team, and he said that he was mostly excited on the outfielder and catcher positions. They look to improve their runs and RBIs. Their offense needed a lot of improvement, and a lot of it came from the outfield production, or should come from the outfield production this year. Catcher's a tough position, like we've already said, and so that's what the front office is excited about for 2019. Now, with all that excitement comes obvious expectations and levels of performance that you need out of players if you expect to perform and move ahead of where you were last year. So let's see what exact talent the Astros have on the field. Here we see Minute Maid Park. This is the home of the Houston Astros. Beautiful park. Obviously, that left field wall is very janky. It's fun to watch, especially just the fact that you've got the porch, then you've got that jut to the outfield, and it's just a very beautiful stadium. So with that beautiful stadium, hopefully they've got the talent to be able to fill it and bring fans in every single night. So as I pull up their roster here, like we already mentioned, catcher was a big, big position for the Houston Astros that they saw as a detriment to their team last year. So they went out and acquired Wilson Ramos, who is now part of the obvious real-life New York Mets. He will get a ton of play and had one of his best years last year in MLB. Give me a second as I pull it up here. And so for 2018, he was able to produce 15 home runs with a 306 average, along with 70 RBIs out of the catcher position. That's really good. Now, whether he's able to recreate that or not, we will have to see, especially the changing of teams going from Citizens Bank Park to Citi Field now. That's going to make a difference along with the lineup. Obviously, the Phillies weren't the strongest team last year, but he has a chance to be a very good catcher. He's shown years where he can hit over 300, produce some decent power. He's a zero-speed guy, though. He won't bring any stolen bases, not a chance. But he's a very solid catcher. He's got a good floor. Whether he can stay healthy or not is probably his biggest question. He's only played over 100 games in, 2 out of the last 3 years. So he's got some struggles there. He's always had health issues his whole career. So if he can stay on the field, he'll be a very good producer. Next, we move over to a very young first baseman in Jake Bauers, who last year didn't have a great year. He looked great out of the gate. Unfortunately, he did really stumble up down the stretch of the season. Ended up in 2018 with where did it go? Ended up batting 201 with a 700 OPS. Not great for a first baseman. But all the projections have him improving upon that. I think especially moving out of Tampa, moving to Cleveland, where they need a strong first baseman. He'll hit in the heart of the order. They've got him projected for only 14 home runs and not even 70 RBIs with a 240 average. I think he's better than that. I really think Bauers has a chance to be great. I think he should be able to produce top 15 first baseman seasons, especially with how lacking first base really is at this point. He's going to get enough run, and he may play some of the outfield at times if they need to shuffle guys around. I wouldn't be surprised. So he has that extra eligibility, especially from last year. Even if he only holds it for now, that's still a great value. Next, we move over to second base, which I'm not very huge on here personally. We have Lourdes Gurriel of the Toronto Blue Jays. He's not the long-term guy for the Blue Jays. They have guys like Kevin Biggio. Bo Bichette should play up at short. You've got a bunch of guys that are coming up that are likely to take Gurriel's spot. And he was a guy that was really up and down last year. He had great stretches where he was very hot. There was times where he was very cold. He was a guy that I know was bounced around between different between different teams last year because he was a guy that if he was playing well, he was a very good fantasy asset. Unfortunately, he only finished with 11 home runs and 35 RBIs in about half of a season of at-bats, maybe a little bit less. So you project that out, really. If he gets the full run, he could be a 20 home run guy, possibly. I don't see the average sitting in the same spot, but he's got the eligibility of second base and shortstop, which is always good if he's got that play time. Hopefully the Blue Jays are able to play him and get him some time for Kevin. Now we move on over to shortstop, which is another unproven position for the Houston Astros in Garrett Hampson. Hampson showed a lot of speed in the minor leagues and has a decent hit tool. He's not going to produce a lot of power, but with the fact that he comes with shortstop eligibility, he is competing for the second base job for the Colorado Rockies. Anytime you can get an offensive producer for the Rockies, it's always a good thing, especially with half their games at Coors. It lets everyone play up. Hampson obviously is not a 20 home run guy, but if he's able to get on base and get the playing time that the Rockies probably should give him, he can produce. He could probably be a Trey Turner light of 10 home runs with 30 stolen bases. He could be a very good player. He's not going to be a superstar, but a solid guy for the middle of the infield that is likely to get second base eligibility. And I traded him away. It hurt to trade such a young player, but I hate how the Rockies handle their prospects. They've done this over the last few years where they just mess around with them and dick them around. You've got Ryan McMahon, who is obviously blocked because of the Ian Desmond signing. Now you have Daniel Murphy. And that same can be said for David Dahl, who was blocked last year because of Carlos Gonzalez, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, you've got these prospects that they've been touting that they supposedly want to play, but then they get blocked. Hopefully Garrett Hampson gets some run and is able to get his chance at whether it's shortstop or second base, most likely second because of Trevor Story. But as a middle of the infield bat with his speed, it could be a Whit Merrifield type guy, which would be absolutely great for the Houston Astros. And saying with how players play up at Coors Field, we obviously have the biggest star of this team at third with Nolan Arenado. He's a guy that just signed a long-term deal with the Colorado Rockies. Great value for for the Astros and Kevin in the fact that they know he's going to be stuck in Coors for at least 3 more years. This keeps their window open for a great third baseman. The problem with Arenado is that he does have some split issues, as most players on the Rockies do once he leaves Coors. In Coors, he is an absolute stud. He is Babe Ruth. Bats over 340 with over 900 OPS. His road games, he tends to struggle a little bit. He's not the same guy, but he is a guy you can count on for at least 35 home runs, at least 110 RBIs, and that doesn't even include his runs. He's not likely to get you many stolen bases. He may get 1 or 2 or 3, which is great. It's a non-zero speed, so every once in a while he may toss one in there for you, but he's going to hit around 300. He's going to have the power. He's going to drive in runs. He's going to be that stud third baseman, a top 10 talent. So Nolan Arenado leads this team and leads this infield. Hopefully his veteran experience can get these other guys some talent and get them playing to where they should be. Now we move to the outfield here, and the first player we'll talk about will roam center field for the Houston Astros, and that is Andrew Benintendi, who was acquired by trade earlier this year as they dealt Alex Bregman. They were able to deal from a position of strength. They were able to move Bregman and get Benintendi and some of these younger players that they've been looking to move on with. And this really helped build their farm system. It hurt for them to move Alex Bregman. I know that. But when they had Nolan Arenado and they needed a talent like Benintendi who can bring not only power but also stolen bases, and a lot of people are projecting for him to be able to move up finally, to be able to take that next step forward like Mookie Betts did a year ago. I'm not saying he'll turn into Mookie Betts, but if he can become an official 2020 guy or even 22 when it comes to home runs and stolen bases, that would be great, not just for the real-life Boston Red Sox, but for Kevin as well. He's yet to do it. He's always hit around 284, 290. Hasn't exactly reached that 300 mark yet for a full season, but he brings a little bit of everything to the table. Right now, they have him projected for 20 home runs and 19 stolen bases with a slew of runs and hopefully a lot of RBIs. As I don't know if the RBIs will really reach that spot, though, because of the fact that he will be the leadoff guy now. Obviously, he's going to be dealing with a very deep lineup, but he's going to be batting in behind the 8th and 9th spot guys. If they can get on, he'll have his chance, but he will score plenty of runs. That's not in doubt. So next we move on over to right field, which is Nick Castellanos. This is a talent that we may actually see moved at the trade deadline in real life from the Detroit Tigers to a contender. Considering that the Tigers are trying to rebuild, they know they need to strike and get some good prospects. Castellanos has shown that he can be very, very good if he stays healthy. Health has been an issue with him, but the power's there, the average is there. He gets streaky at times, but he really put it all together last year with over 20 home runs, a 300 average on a really terrible Tigers team. So if he's able to continue to do that, I'll be excited to see what he does. And especially for a team that needs some excitement, Castellanos should bring that to Detroit, and hopefully he can do the same down in Houston and be that offensive force that they really need. Then we move on over to left field. 2018 was a season to forget for Kyle Schwarber. He was absolutely atrocious. He had so many struggles, and I'm sure he would love to leave it in the dust. He was mainly a pure power hitter, a very Mike Zunino type with a 238 average. His OPS was over 800, which is astounding considering the fact that he's able to walk, he's able to slug. But most fantasy owners were very disappointed in the fact that he only was a power hitting guy. Everyone expected a 280, 290, a very Nick Castellanos type of power, average, and everything, a pure hitter. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that last year, and he even had a demotion, if I remember right. Or was that 2017? I really don't remember. But he had struggles last year. Everyone expected him to be great. Maybe he's able to put it together this year, especially for a Cubs offense that struggled, that really broke, especially in the second half when they had something of 40-something games last year where they had either scored 0 or 1 run in the entire season. That's a quarter of your games. You can't do that. Hopefully Schwarber's able to get back to what people believed he could be, to be that hitter. If he can reach the 25 home run mark or 28 home run mark while batting a 270, that's going to be a great advantage for the Houston Astros. They will need that outfield talent to carry them because the outfield is lacking a little bit of proven talent. They need it to come from the outfield at this point. And hopefully Benintendi, Castellanos, and Schwarber can be that offensive production. There won't be many steals between Castellanos and Schwarber. We know that, but that's why they have Benintendi. It really rounds out that outfield. Now, moving on to the extra hitters that they have, let's start with middle infield, and that middle infielder would be Starlin Castro. The thing with Starlin Castro, if he's on any other team, he's much more valuable. Unfortunately, he is stuck on the Marlins. He will be there for a while, and at this point, he's only a pure batting average type guy. He won't produce many runs. He's not going to have a lot of RBIs. He's going to struggle to put up power because of the fact that he's in a pure pitcher's park at this point, one of the worst places to play. He should get double-digit home runs, and his OPS will be middling at best because he doesn't have that ability for power there. He's going to be a 300-ish type hitter. Everything else really struggles, and it's unfortunate for him because he could be one of the first guys to get 3,000 hits in his career and most likely not make the Hall of Fame. At this point, Starlin Castro is at 1,000, or he's played 1,300 games, and in just over 5,000 at bats, he's almost at 1,500 hits. This guy knows how to hit. If he was on any other team, he'd be very, very valuable. Unfortunately, he's just stuck in a rut because of Miami. So moving on, we have the corner infield next. And unfortunately, this is a guy that a couple of years ago would have been great to have. Unfortunately, Eduardo Nunez really became a utility guy for the Boston Red Sox. Didn't do a whole lot last year because of the fact that Boston has a great strength of talent. I mean, he put up double-digit home runs, but the stolen bases weren't there like we expected. And especially in a nearly full season of at-bats at 480, he wasn't the same guy. He hit 265. His OPS was below 700. He wasn't that produced that many thought he could be or would be after what he showed in 2017 when he slashed 313, 341, and 460 for the Boston Red Sox. And as for how much playtime he gets, I don't know. A lot of it's going to be if Pedroia's out, if Xander Bogaerts gets hurt, if Rafael Devers isn't performing. He may even play a little bit in the outfield. But a lot of it's going to come from second and third base. So if he's able to get the at-bats, he should be able to do something. But once again, he's just a guy at this point. He's nothing special, unfortunately. Now, at the last spot in the infield, we have Maikel Franco. Will the real Maikel Franco please stand up, because we don't know what he is. There were times where he was absolutely just dominant and filthy as a hitter last year. And there were times he looked like he belonged in A-ball because of how bad he was. I mean, you really look at his splits from 2018, and let's find his hottest month here. So in April, he's slashing 278 with an 816 OPS, tearing the world apart. Everyone thought he was going to be great for the season, was going to be able to finally produce the way that people thought he could. And then you get to May and June, where he's only hitting 250, 258 with 2 home runs in all of June and 4 home runs in May. And he's just not producing all of a sudden. He's not hitting for power. He's not hitting for average. And then July, he lights it all up. He's a guy he's similar to what Castellanos was when he was young, is a very streaky hitter. Hopefully he can work that out this year, because the Phillies are looking to compete this year. They need him to play well. So they will be giving him his opportunities. He will likely be on a short leash, though, if he does not produce out the gate. So let's look at the final outfielders that the Houston Astros have. I like both of them. We'll pull them both up here. We have Tyler O'Neill and Kevin Pillar. I'll start with Pillar since he's the lesser of the two. Unfortunately, he hasn't put it together, and a lot of his issues have once again been health. You look back at he's actually been fairly healthy. I'm thinking of Kevin Kiermaier of the Rays. But Pillar, he's a guy that he's a good fifth outfielder. He's going to get you double-digit home runs, double-digit stolen bases. So those counting stats are great from him. However, his rate stats are going to struggle. He doesn't have that much power. He's not able to drive the ball to the gaps. So he's going to drag down the ratios when it comes to average and OPS, but he will get you those valuable home runs and stolen bases, especially as a fifth outfielder. You can't argue with that whatsoever. Then you have at outfield 4, Tyler O'Neill, one of my favorite guys on this team that is yet to prove himself, but I think could be a very, very valuable player to the Houston Astros starting this year. The biggest problem, once again, that we've seen with the Houston Astros is playtime. We know that the St. Louis Cardinals have a pretty good outfield with Marcell Ozuna, Harrison Bader, and Dexter Fowler at right field currently, but Tyler O'Neill is knocking on that door, and he's ready to break it down. He is ready to take that spot, and it's just time for the Cardinals to give him that spot. If he can get the playtime, he's going to be a power guy. I would compare him to Kyle Schwarber. I mean, you look at what his predictions are for this year. They have him only at 6 home runs with a 237 average, but in 130 at-bats last year, he had 9 home runs. So you extrapolate that out, that's over 30 home runs in a season. Oh, come on, don't die on me here, Fantrax. Come on. So, home to Houston Astros. There we go. So you look at Tyler O'Neill. They only have him predicted for about 80 at-bats, which is a struggle for the Houston Astros. But like I said, 130 at-bats, you extrapolate that out to about 520 plate appearances. He's hitting 36 home runs. I don't see him having a super high average, probably a 250 guy. But as a pure power hitter, he's going to be able to do it. He makes it look so easy. So if O'Neill can get the playtime that I expect him to get, he'll be a lot of fun to watch. Now, at first utility, we have Brandon Belt. This was a first baseman that was valuable about 3-4 years ago. Unfortunately, he just isn't the same anymore. Concussions have taken their toll. His health has dipped, but also the power that he used to have just isn't there. And he was a 300 average. He was a great pair with Buster Posey. And unfortunately, the Giants just kind of suck at this point. He won't be putting up tons of runs, tons of RBIs. With 400 at-bats last year, he only totaled about 90 total runs and RBIs together combined. That's terrible for a first baseman and for a utility. I've always been a Brandon Belt supporter. I have had him for years in a different league, dropped him a couple of years ago because of his health issues in 2017, and it just hasn't been the same. 2018, he was only able to put together 400 plate appearances. 2017, he's sitting at 382. It's been a struggle for him ever since. He's a bounce back candidate for this year, but even then, maybe his best opportunity is 70 runs scored and 80 RBIs. Not bad for a utility player, but you're hoping Belt can get back to his regular days. And finally, we have shortstop Scott Kingery. This is a guy who absolutely flopped last year, but I'm still high on the guy. I probably did have outlandish expectations for him last year, but I think he can be a double-digit runs or stolen bases and home run producer. The home runs are likely going to sit about 10 or 11. He still has the speed. His nickname is Jetpack. He's shown the speed. He just has to be able to get on. The biggest struggle for him is likely being at the bottom of a stacked Phillies order with Real Muto and Harper and Segura and Rhys Hoskins. Hoskins is likely going to be fourth. You're going to have Segura at the top of the order. But I think Kingery's likely to sit at the 8 or 9 hole, not really being able to play up to his skills. So that's the one downside that there is to Kingery. He has this pretty good upside, but the playtime should be there at who knows where, because second base is taken by Cesar Hernandez, shortstop by Gene Segura. So if Kingery can get the playtime, I think he can be valuable as a utility guy, but that's about it. So let's move on to the bench of the Houston Astros, who are obviously headlined by the two catchers that they're looking forward to, with Omar Narvaez and Carson Kelly. Kelly traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks this past offseason after being moved from the real-life Cardinals. I'm interested to see what Carson Kelly can do. I think that's a great hold for the Houston Astros. He's only projected for 5 home runs and a 230 average. Not great, but I really think there is something to his game. He'll get the playtime. We know that. He's projected for about 100 games, so he's going to have a piece of it. Maybe moving to a different team, getting away from the huge expectations that were placed on him in St. Louis. Maybe moving and getting that scenery change is able to help him, and that's what he needs. As for Narvaez, moved to the Seattle Mariners from the White Sox this year. I think that has a huge toll on his play. He's not a huge power guy, so that's going to dip. His average, I don't think, stays, and a lot of projections seem to agree with me as he's only a 255 projected hitter, so we'll see what comes out of him. Next, we have Dansby Swanson and Colin Moran on the infield at shortstop and third, respectively. Neither guy have been impressive. They both should hit double-digit home runs. Swanson supposedly is projected for about 12 stolen bases, which is a bit surprising to me because he was able to hit 10 last year. I don't know if he's able to do that. I wonder if he struggles out the gate. They are likely to put Johan Camargo there and platoon with Swanson. That's a big issue there with playtime. If he can play, he's struggled with the fastball mostly. He's had those issues. He's just not a great hitter at this point. For being a number 1 overall pick in the MLB amateur draft, he hasn't lived up to expectations. And Colin Moran, likely to play at first base this year and get that eligibility is great. Unfortunately, he hasn't lived up to the expectation of what he could be. Only 11 home runs, a 750 OPS last year. Good bench hitter, still some decent potential, and he's only, let's see, where did he go? Colin Moran. He's only 26. He could still have a good breakout. Or actually, he will play third now to think about it because the Pirates have Josh Bell. So he'll play third. He'll have that corner infield eligibility. But he's got a lot left to prove, and I wonder if he's going to really get the play time, especially with Jung Ho Kang back for the Pirates. And then finally on the bench, we have outfielder Albert Almora. I am not having the best time with talking tonight, but he's really just a guy at this point. He's going to split time with Ian Happ. Not a lot of power, not a lot of speed, nothing to really talk about there. So with that, let's move to the mound, because the Astros actually had a pretty good rotation earlier this year. They did deal Mike Clevenger and bringing some decent talent back to other sports, but especially the top two that they have here I'm excited to see. And first, the pitching staff of the Houston Astros is headlined by Aaron Nola, one of my favorite pitchers, very fun to watch on a great Phillies team. And even with his year last year, I still think he can even improve upon that. He had a 2.37 ERA, 17 wins, 224 strikeouts, and he did all of that with a much, much worse defensive core behind him last year. I mean, with Hoskins now back at first, he's a very good defender there instead of playing in left field. You have Bryce Harper in right field, Segura at short. The defense has improved all around for Philly, so I think Nola should easily be able to sustain what he did last year. They have him projected for some regression, not as many strikeouts, a bit higher of an ERA, but still a great SP1 to have for the Houston Astros team. Now, next at SP2, we actually have an unproven talent in Yusei Kikuchi. He's very exciting. He's a left-hander that he's not going to blow you away with speed. He's going to be very deceptive. And if you watch any videos on him, the way he hides the ball is very impressive. He's able to keep the ball behind his back and hidden for most of his delivery up until the point of release. So hitters, he's going to start out hot. I guarantee you a lot of people are going to have issues with his delivery and being able to track the ball. When the league finally adjusts to him, what can we expect out of him? I'm not sure. I think it's a good pickup in free agency by the Houston Astros, with the simple fact that there's a lot of unproven talent. If he comes out of the gate hot, people are going to want him. If they want to sell him, they could do that. They could always sit on found money, especially out of free agency like that. So moving to SP3, we have Joey Lucchesi of the San Diego Padres. Lucchesi wasn't impressive last year. He had some stretches where he was really, really good, and then times where he blew up, but he was a rookie, and he was on a very bad Padres team. The Padres have obviously improved by losing Christian Villanueva to Japan over this offseason, and then also acquiring Manny Machado. They still have Fernando Tatis, who I could possibly see up in 2019 if the Padres are ready to say, let's go, we can do this, and get Tatis some experience in the big leagues. Lucchesi will definitely benefit from that. He's got a pretty good defense behind him with Machado and Luis Urias, and Ian Kinsler at second still isn't bad. He's able to move at a decent pace, so you're going to have a good defensive team behind him. I like Lucchesi for this year. He's likely to sit around a 4 ERA. He's not going to be anything flashy, but at almost 9 Ks per 9, you can't argue with that. It's a good strikeout rate for an SP3. Next, we have another Pittsburgh Pirate in Joe Musgrove, a guy that a lot of people are predicting for him to improve. He was a little inconsistent at times last year, only threw 115 innings, but he did produce 100 Ks in that same time and a 4 ERA. He's only 26. Like I said, the same thing with Colin Moran, 26 years old. Pittsburgh is looking to compete. They're going to try and get the most out of these players. They're not going to give up on them. So Musgrove is going to get his time. He's going to get his starts. And if he can remain consistent, will be a very good value at SP4. At SP5, we have Michael Fulmer, a guy that I've never been huge on myself. I loved what I saw that first year out of him, but I've always been a guy who likes stuff. He's got a decent pitch repertoire, but his control hasn't been there all the time. He's had some issues with it, and he hasn't been getting the strikeout stuff that we kind of saw that first year. He's always going to be a control guy. He's going to have to mess with hitters. The problem with that is if he's off one day, he's going to get lit up. He's going to kill your ratios. So that's a starting rotation there of Nola, Kikuchi, Lucchesi, Musgrove, and Fulmer. Some good potential guys headlined by a great starter in Nola. So let's move on to the bullpen here, who is headlined by Atlanta Braves possible closer, Arodys Vizcaino. Similar to Musgrove or Lucchesi or Fulmer, he's going to be very volatile, especially out of the bullpen. He lost his job for a bit last year because of injury to his shoulder, but at this point, he's projected to be the Braves closer going to this year. His biggest problem is he just doesn't have the strikeout stuff that you kind of want out of a closer. Only 38 innings pitched, 40 strikeouts, a good ERA, but there were times where he was so inconsistent that I know Sean, I know myself, I know a lot of Braves fans hated him and wanted Minter as the closer. So if he's able to lock down that job for once, it's going to be a very valuable job as the Braves are looking to compete in the NL East. And with a good offense, he should have plenty of opportunities for saves. Coming in at RP2, we have Ross Stripling, who right now we could put into the rotation. Unfortunately, we don't know what his role is going to be. With Clayton Kershaw possibly going down, he may be the guy to step in for Kershaw and be that SP5 for the Dodgers. But at this point, he's a relief pitcher. He's going to be a long-term relief pitcher, and he's working towards a starter's workload. And he showed a lot of potential last year. Unfortunately, near the end of the year, the Dodgers did dig him around and moved him between the starting rotation and the bullpen. If he's able to stick to one of them, I think he could be a very valuable fantasy asset because he has good strikeout stuff. He has a good ERA. I like what he can do. Unfortunately, his workload just isn't guaranteed. Next, at RP3, we have a guy that the Astros recently traded for, and that's Ty Butray. And that's a guy... He is okay. He's a relief pitcher for the LA Angels and showed some good potential, came over from Boston in a deal, and as a good relief pitch prospect, has the potential to close out. I thought he might be the closer going into 2019. Unfortunately, the Angels wanted something more proven, and they went and signed Cody Allen. I don't think Allen was probably the best move. I think Ty Butray would have been the guy or should have been the guy to be the closer spot that they've struggled with for the last few years. I'd love to see him get that spot. Unfortunately, he might be the 7th or 8th inning guy. And even though the Angels have a good offense, they may not have a whole lot of save opportunities because their starting rotation is constantly hurt, constantly trash, and that really hurts Ty's value. Now, moving on to the last guy in the bullpen, we have Carl Edwards Jr., who is a very impressive talent. He's got some really nasty stuff for the Cubs. He's never been able to lock down that closer spot. He gets a good amount of holds. But if the Cubs are expected to be, or if they become what we expect them to be in real life, he's going to pitch a lot of games that are blowouts or that they're either ahead by a lot, and he's a guy that, okay, that works. The biggest thing with him, though, and he even admitted in a interview before that he doesn't always know where the ball is going. He doesn't know. He could have a great warm-up and then go out and pitch like shit on the mound, or vice versa. He's admitted that. There's times he doesn't know what he's doing. Maybe Tommy Hotovy of the Cubs is able to bring him back and get him into a good headspace, but he's a bit of a head case when it comes to it because he can't think about it. He just goes up there and throws. So that leads to some very inconsistent performances. So next we'll move on with the 3 pitchers that the Houston Astros have at the end of their order with Alex Wood, Vince Velasquez. We'll start with these two, both good starting pitchers. Alex Wood, I don't like the move to Cincinnati for him, as you can see him with the old Cincinnati logo there on his hat. And unfortunately, it does look like he's injured at this point. Oh, that's right. He injured his back. And the reason he actually injured his back was due to him cooking up a bunch of crawfish and making a jambalaya for his team. This is a funny injury I had seen earlier this week, that he strained his back doing a bunch of cooking, about 5 hours over the stove, he said. And so he's currently hurt, but he should be ready for opening day. Not anything too concerning. The biggest concern with him is his consistency. He hasn't been the 20-win guy we saw a couple of years ago, the guy that's absolutely dominant. The walks were a bit of an issue at times last year. The strikeouts were pretty decent, but just not where you wanted it to be. Actually, he did have a good walk here last year. So the strikeouts weren't where you expect him to be. He's a very control type guy. He's a good pitcher, never going to blow anyone away, but a great SP6, if starting pitcher 6, if the Houston Astros need him to be bumped up higher in their rotation. Next, we have Vince Velasquez, where he's a guy that he's got an issue with his fastball. If he's spotting his fastball, he can spot everything else. But from the very first pitch of his day, you can see if he's going to have a good day or a bad day, because that fastball, once he loses control of it, it's over. His fastball makes everything else play up. He's a good pitcher. Unfortunately, he did finish with a 4.85 ERA last year, but that was also the bad Phillies defense behind him that hurt him. His whip was over 1.3, struggled with those issues. And you can see in his strikeouts that he's got the potential there. 146 innings with 161 strikeouts. The wipeout nasty stuff is there, but he can't always control it. So if he's able to improve with the defense behind him, that'll work out wonders for the Houston Astros. And next we have Greg Holland, who did get signed by the Arizona Diamondbacks. Not a bad relief pitcher to have. Unfortunately, he's not the same shutdown guy he was, and especially moving to Arizona, he's going to battle for closing spots. It doesn't seem like they're going to have the typical 7th inning guy, 8th inning guy, 9th inning guy, and that's going to switch between Holland, Archie Bradley, likely Yohan Lopez, some other guys. So Holland is a good relief pitcher. He will be in line for some saves or holds, whichever one he gets, but it's not a great Arizona team. I love what he can bring to the Houston Astros if he's able to lock up that closing gig. Next, we have some pretty good bench pitchers. We have relief pitcher Brad Brock and starting pitcher Ryan Borucki. Brock obviously could interchange with Carl Edwards Jr. if he ever goes down, or if Brock actually gets some good opportunities, could easily slide into any of the relief pitching spots or extra pitcher spots that we have. And then we have I would still call him a prospect in Ryan Borucki. He pitched 97 innings last year of 3.8 ERA ball. Not a strikeout guy. I would compare him to Alex Wood in the sense that he's able to keep a lower ERA. However, the biggest thing with him for me is 33 walks to 67 strikeouts in 97 innings. That's for every 2 strikeouts he has 1 walk. That's not spectacular. You want that to be around 4. Those are your more consistent guys. But he's a guy that he showed he's able to get weak contact. He's able to get ground balls, as he had 1.5 ground balls per fly ball last year. He's going to be on a Toronto team that is decent but not great just yet. The defense isn't exactly there. But I like Borucki as a possible prospect and a guy to hold in Dynasty like we are. Next, you have another Cincinnati Reds pitcher that was moved from another team, and that's Tanner Roark. Obviously not the guy we saw a couple of years ago, already 32 years old, and the move to Cincinnati kind of scares me. Not a bad bench pitcher if he's able to figure something out. And then you have Lucas Giolito and Fernando Romero. Giolito has been absolutely nasty. He's got a great hammer curveball. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to put it together, and he struggled to be able to produce at a true MLB level. He was over a 6 ERA last year. I'll give him the advantage, or not advantage, but he's got the balls to go out there. He pitched 173 innings, even though he only struck out 125 batters. with the 6 ERA. I mean, he took the ball and he's able to give you innings, but you don't know what kind of quality you're going to get from it, unfortunately. And he has not looked great in spring training, which is a bad sign for the Houston Astros and Giolito at this point. Then you have prospect Fernando Romero, who bounced between AA and AAA in the bigs last year, threw 55 innings in the bigs, looked good when he first started, but then really kind of fell apart as his ERA was over 4.5. Good prospect to hold. He's only 24 years old, and the Twins are going to have all the opportunity they want to give him. So I like that as a good hold right now. So speaking of prospects, we've got some very exciting prospects. This is probably one of the top farms in our Dynasty League. It's definitely in the top half of the system, and it is headlined by the AAA Round Rock Express and the AA Corpus Christi Hooks. So the first prospect that you guys should be watching for this year is first baseman and outfielder Yordan Alvarez. Alvarez was acquired in a trade from the Chicago White Sox to the Houston Astros as a part of that Bregman deal. He is a pure hitter. He's a guy that could easily put up 30 bombs, a 300 average, a very Jose Abreu type. He's not going to stick around in the outfield, I'll tell you that, especially if you have George Springer and Kyle Tucker coming up as well. Alvarez will be a pure first baseman. He does not have the athleticism to play in the outfield. So even though he does have outfield eligibility, once he comes up, he will lose that. But in the time where we don't have a lot of great first basemen, the Astros could absolutely use that, both real life and fantasy. Next, we have a guy I just mentioned in Kyle Tucker playing in the outfield who should get his chance this year. It should be pretty early on. He's looked great in spring training. He struggled last year when he came up, didn't have the best debut, but everyone knows he's got the power, he's got the speed. He could be a 30-15 or 30-10 guy for the Houston Astros on a damn good offense. He just has to get his opportunity. I think that opportunity will come when Josh Reddick struggles this year. He's yet to stay healthy completely. He's had a lot of struggles over the last few years, and while the Astros are paying him about $13 million a year, Kyle Tucker's ready. He's shown a lot of improvement, and I think he's going to get his opportunity this year, which will be great for not only the real-life Astros, but also Kevin and his fantasy Astros as well. Now, moving on to pitching prospects, the first one we have is another Twins pitcher in Steven Gonsalves. I'm not his biggest fan. His biggest issue, once again, that we've seen throughout the entire Houston Astros pitching staff is walks. I mean, he's got some decent stuff, but 22 walks to 16 strikeouts is horrible. And that was last year in the bigs in 24 innings. Walked as many people as he pitched innings. He's going to always struggle. If he's a very Lucas Giolito type, unfortunately, at this point. He doesn't look promising, but he's going to have an opportunity. Guys are young. They get their chances. He's only 24 as well, same as Fernando Romero. If him and Romero can finally figure out how to hit the strike zone and be more consistent, they could be good back end of the rotation producers. And then finally, we have a guy that I do believe the Astros acquired in a trade, and that is Corbin Burnes, who right now is likely a relief pitcher for the Milwaukee Brewers as a part of that nasty bullpen with Jeremy Jeffress, Josh Hader, Alex Claudio, who was recently added. The Brewers have a ton of arms. Unfortunately, it does hurt Burns' value because we don't know where he's going to be used. He could be used in a Chris Davinsky type role where, hey, go out and pitch an inning or two, which is good for fantasy because he'll bring down ratios and bring you strikeouts, but likely not a lot of saves or holds right off the bat. I love his stuff. And you look at what he did last year in his debut, 38 innings, 35 strikeouts, and a 2.6 ERA. Excellent, excellent, excellent with a 1.0 whip. And he's apparently working with a 5-pitch mix, adding a changeup and a sinker over this offseason. He's trying to win a rotation spot. So if he's able to grab one of those rotation spots, he could be very, very, very valuable, especially on a good Milwaukee Brewers team with a very funky defense behind him. But Burns showed he's got the capability to strike out 9 per 9 as a bullpen relief. That may drop when he gets to the starter role, but if he's able to go 5 innings or 6 innings each time out, or at least with that 5-pitch mix, he has a good potential. So keep an eye on these 4 players here: Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, Steven Gonsalves, and Corbin Burns. There are a few others that are technically prospects still, but are on their main roster. But these are the 4 that I wanted to highlight. They still have some good names, but these are the guys that should debut here in 2019. So finally, I had to feature the rainbow jerseys because who doesn't love those from back in the day? I actually really enjoy them. Now, as much as I enjoy those, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this part. The division prediction for the Houston Astros, as much as I love their potential, unfortunately, I think the floor for them is very low at this point until some of those names like Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, Zach Collins start coming up and bringing it. And the same goes for Garrett Hampson. Will he get playtime? Will he not? Scott Kingery is another name. But for the Hank Aaron division, for the Houston Astros, I've got them finishing 5th. And they're going to be at the bottom of the division. They are in a very tough division with the Chicago White Sox, with the Atlanta Braves. The Twins are actually going to be a pretty surprising team, I think. They've made a lot of moves. They added to their offensive depth and pitching depth, especially from the Astros with Mike Clevenger. They are likely to finish 5th in that division in a tough one. And with that, because of their tough division, it means a harder schedule. So I've got them finishing 10th in the league. I've got them bottom of the barrel. But with that, there is an advantage for them to be able to stock up on more prospects with Alvarez or Tucker or Gonsalves. They have guys that are going to come out of their farm, opening up those roster spots for high-end prospect talent. So it is what it is. I've got them finishing at the bottom of the league, not because of lack of talent, but